Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Manny Sahota. I'm joined by Sourabh Pandey and Tony Thampan. Today, we're going to talk about leading with trust, building and deploying agents in a regulated world. I think this is an awesome topic. In the past year or so, you're seeing a wave of AI, cybersecurity, and privacy regulations. If you look at the regions that are heavily regulated, you see actually much greater innovation. AI is actually accelerated in those regions more aggressively, right? We're also going to talk about some of the key challenges organizations face, right? How do we build these agents by staying compliant, right? Especially in this new heavy regulated era, right? So what we'll talk about are really our tools and technologies. We'll talk about Azure AI Foundry, how to build Copilot agents responsibly, and then most importantly, what tools and technologies help organizations be cyber resilient, and help organizations be cyber resilient as well. So we see this workforce evolving, right? First, we used to work on human collaboration. We recently introduced Copilots. I'm sure there's many use cases for why people use Copilots, summarizing documentation, leveraging automation for repeated tasks. And really now the next wave is using agents, right? And agents really take action across your systems. They're seen as mini applications, right? And the intention here is to show as we move from people to Copilot to agents, each step has fundamentally changed the way we work. And as agents become more prevalent, the need for robust compliance and governance will increase exponentially. According to Microsoft's work trend, 82% of business leaders expect to roll out agents in the next 12 to 18 months. This is not just a trend, it's really a tidal wave of change. And the intention of this slide is really to show that the adoption of agents is aggressively accelerated, and with that, once again, compliance cannot be seen as an afterthought. Especially because by 2028, this number is going to be 1.3 billion, right? And at this scale, every agent's going to need a least privileged identity, scoping tools, and clearly defined boundaries as well. So if we think about this in terms of fleet governance, can we discover agents, classify their risks, enforce standard guardrails, and then monitor posture continuously? If the answer is yes, then scaling becomes manageable. If the answer is no, then there's significant challenges we'll have with fragmented information, right? So the architecture we have here supports the former: fleet-aware, policy-driven, and continuously measured. I'm just going to share some data points on how we look at agents. A trusted agent doesn't overshare data. They respect boundaries. It also can't be misused or jailbroken. Agents must resist prompt injection attacks or attempts to override safety rules. Also doesn't misuse your tools here as well. So preventing from unauthorized risky behavior, right? So these qualities aren't optional. They're the foundation for deploying agents in heavy regulated environments responsibly. Now this is the exciting part, right? We've seen, I think in the past 6+ years, the focus was more on heavy on privacy laws, right? The skeleton backbone of most regulations is GDPR. From there, we've seen like CCPA in California, DPDP in India. Then we've had this evolution of heavy cybersecurity laws. We have DORA for banking financial services in Europe. Banks that wanted to be cyber resilient that were outside EU would also align with DORA, right? And then we have the world's most intelligent cybersecurity regulation with this NIS2, impacts 18 sectors and has 14 key requirements. Now comes this huge wave of AI regulations, right? And EU AI Act is setting the standard for strict requirements and transparency for risk management. You're seeing some themes. Japan, Brazil, Canada, India have their own frameworks here as well. And on top of this, there's also standards like ISO 42001 and frameworks like NIST in the US. So here we see that AI regulation cannot no longer be a future concern, right? It's here today, it's accelerating, and it's shaping how we design, deploy, and monitor every agent. So we see this big shift in our global regulatory landscape. And the challenge that customers face are, can you prove compliance today, right? And if the answer is no, especially considering tomorrow you'll be out of compliance, That's a challenge, right? And once again, this is driven by two forces. One is obviously global regulatory acceleration. Our general counsel actually recently posted, I think I mentioned this before, it's a really cool article. It's regions on heavily regulated eras mapped to AI adoption and acceleration, right? So those are really the two driving forces, regulatory acceleration and trust becoming the control plane. I'm now going to hand it over to Tony, who's going to he's going to do a deeper dive and talk about how we can scale agents responsibly. Over to you, Tony.
Thank you, Manny, for that wonderful intro. My name is Tony. I'm a product leader with Microsoft Purview. With that context that Manny said, let us look at how organizations are scaling agents. Picture this. You just launched your first 10 AI agents, and your leadership comes back and then says, I just don't want 10, I want 10,000. Suddenly the questions multiply. How do you keep control as the agent's fleets explodes? How do you ensure that every agent that you deployed is efficient, compliant, and ready for production without drowning your teams in paperwork? Developers crave speed and flexibility. Compliance teams demand assurance and risk reduction. It looks like a tug of war, but what if it's actually a partnership? Today, we will show you how you can scale your agents' responsibility so that innovation accelerates and trust becomes inbuilt. Now, this partnership between innovation and regulatory trust is one of the most critical pieces for the new agentic organizations. Without the balance, you would either compromise on speed or on regulatory trust. You don't want to miss out on either. Without the speed, you're going to lag behind your competitors. And if you don't have regulatory trust, you don't want to bring in the air of your regulatory organizations who are looking for, okay, hey, is there an opportunity out there, right? As an enterprise, without that balance, you will end up lagging behind. So you need to create a common language between the innovators and the trust organizations that you have. The developers need to understand the guardrails and risk guidelines, and the compliance organizations need to trust the pipelines that the developers are building. That's how you achieve both velocity and assurance so that the agents scale safely and the innovations never stall. Now, this is where Microsoft Purview joins hands with Microsoft Foundry to help you deploy agents with trust. There are three core customer pain points that we see across organizations. One, translate the ever-evolving regulations to actionable controls. The key word here is actionable. What can you do now, and what can you do with confidence? The second is to keep your AI development process safe and compliant. You want to have full visibility and trust. And the third, it's not a one-time job. You want to have continuous protection with these guardrails. This is just like your morning exercise. You need to keep doing it day by day. Would that not be amazing if all three can be solved easily? Now let's think about how you can build compliance into every step of your AI agent's journey. Instead of treating compliance as a final checkbox, you need to make it part of your agent's DNA, from the first idea through deployment and beyond. This is where Compliance Manager helps you embed your regulatory checks and balance throughout the agent lifecycle. The agent journey can be broken down into three parts: develop, deploy, and monitor. Now, here's what is different. Your compliance team isn't just waiting for you to finish. They are running the playbook alongside you. These aren't separate processes. They're partners moving together, lock and sync, like two dance partners dancing together. When these steps align, like in a great dance, compliance and development work together to ensure every agent is trustworthy, ready from the start. No last-minute scrambles, no fighting for audit reports at the end. It will be throughout your life cycle. Now let's pull back the curtain on building enterprise AI agents, right? And here you can see that all these processes are running side by side, right? And as the developers go through this life cycle, choosing models, crafting prompts, wiring up logic, then comes testing and deployment. And then as agents keep evolving, new features, data, and use cases come up. The developers need to use real-time telemetry and feedback to build keep the agents sharp and safe. On the other hand, compliance teams map out the regulations. They want to translate them to actionable controls. They assess risk, assign owners, and make sure controls are built into the development lifecycle. So compliance is a never one set and forget thing. It's a living process, monitoring the posture in real time, collecting evidence, and being ready for audits. Now let's kick off with the develop phase, the blueprint for every agent. This isn't just about writing code. It's about designing with purpose and foresight. Teams define what agents will do, set clear data boundaries, and build in accountability from the start. By embedding safety checks and governance early, we avoid last-minute surprises. The result? Agents are innovative, secure, and ready to scale. Because trust isn't an add-on, it is engineered from the start. Now let's zoom in what develop means from a regulatory or a trust viewpoint. This isn't just about building cool features. It is making sure that every agent you create is set up for trust and accountability from the start. So what does this look like in practice? First, we need to be clear on the rules. What regulations apply for your industry, for your geography, and for the AI agents that you're building, right? Now, it could be EU AI, it could be NIST, or it could be industry-specific standards. But we want to understand what good really means like. Next, we want to turn those rules into real-world guardrails. At the organization level, it means setting up policies for data, identity, and content safety. For each agent project, it is about baking those controls right into the build. So compliance is an afterthought. It's part of the DNA. Then we check our posture. Are all guardrails actually in place, or did they drift? Are our evaluators passing? This gives us a compliance score and shows us where we need to tighten things up, right? And finally, we need to close these gaps. That might mean enabling a guardrail again or fixing some things out there, right? Now, this seems like a complicated process, right? How do you identify all those guardrails that you need to do? How do you identify those controls? This is where we have brought in our new AI-powered regulatory templates. It's a game changer, right? Think of this as your AI-powered compass for traversing the wild world of compliance. Let's do a quick before and after. Before, the teams would slog through tons of PDFs, emails, notes, spending months trying to understand these regulations, translating them into controls, right? Now, with that AI-powered regulatory templates, this heavy lifting would happen in minutes. You simply upload a regulation, say the EU Act, and the AI gets to work. It first scans for malware in your PDF, passes the text, and instantly pulls out the obligations that are relevant for your environment, whether it's M365, Azure, or Microsoft Foundry. No more guesswork. No more ping-pongs between engineering and legal. From there, Compliance Manager lights up a ready-to-run assessment. Controls, owners, due dates, evidence, all of them, that is in there. So compliance is not just a static PDF document or an Excel sheet that you need to fill up. It's a living, actionable plan that your teams can actually execute. And as regulations evolve, you can keep pace with it. Which controls are impacted and what you need to do next. Bottom line, the AI-powered regulatory templates turn compliance from a slow manual interpretation exercise into a fast operational reality. Minutes, not months. Controls you can act on, proof you can show on demand. Now you build your agent. Now comes the real test. Before it goes live, it needs to prove it is safe, smart, and ready for the real world. Think of this as the agent's final exam, if you will. Developers run a series of checks. Is it making safe decisions? is the quality up to standards? Are its responses relevant and helpful? These aren't just boxes to tick. They are what stands between your organization and risk. By running these safety, quality, and content relevance checks upfront, you make sure every agent you deploy is trustworthy and ready to deliver value from day one. When it's time to deploy, it's not just about launching new tech. It's a critical compliance checkpoint too. Before anything goes live, we need to set clear standards for accuracy, fairness, and safety. Then run evaluators to make sure the agent meets every requirement. If something's not right, maybe a bias check fails, or a safety threshold isn't met, we fix it and we need to rerun the checks. Only when everything passes do we move forward. This way, every agent that goes into production is safe, ethical, and audit ready from day one. Let's be honest, regulatory evaluations used to be a slog. But it's not anymore. We are excited to introduce automated evaluations for Foundry agents right inside Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager. Here is how it works. We pick the metrics that matter from your regulations, run them as automated evaluations in Microsoft Foundry, and instantly get auto-scored results synced back as evidence. If there is a gap, it becomes an action item. Your compliance score updates in real time, and you can export audit-ready proof before you even go live. No more checklist, no more guesswork, just a clear go, no-go signal you can trust. With the automated evals, you aren't just ticking boxes. You're moving fast, lowering risk, and making compliance a true accelerator. Now, what are these evaluators, right? In Microsoft Foundry, we have these evaluators mapped directly to AI regulations. It's already supported, or we can be dynamically created. These evaluators fall into three big buckets. The first one, performance and quality metrics. Are the agent's responses fluent, relevant, and coherent? In other words, does it actually deliver what it promised? And then, responsible AI and safety checks. Evaluators can scan for any harmful or biased content, like hate speech, unfair outputs, even self-harm indicators. These checks are tightly aligned with regulations that ask you to make sure that your models are not biased, right? Then you have content relevance and coherence, right? This would make sure that your models make sense in the context and it matches what you want to do. Right? Now, all these evaluators automatically sync to Compliance Manager, and the assessment that we have helps ensure that you are in control. But you also need to make sure that every agent out there, which is being built on Foundry, is continuing that process, right? And that's where we have taken it to the next level with communication compliance policies for Foundry interactions. This is your organization-wide safety net, governing every agent prompt and response in real time. Here is how it works. You set a single policy for your entire organization, covering sensitive content, standards, data boundaries. In Microsoft Foundry, these guardrails are visible to the developers who enforce them on runtime. Any deviations to these guardrails or the policy are flagged in the Foundry control plane. Harmful or non-compliant prompts and responses are blocked instantly, and admins get clear, actionable feedback right in the control plane. This isn't just about preventing risk after the fact. You are stopping unsafe outputs even before they ever reach users. With one policy protecting every project, you get consistency at scale. When regulators ask, you don't just say you're compliant, you show it instantly. Bottom line, the communication compliance policies turns trust into a built-in feature of your agent ecosystem. So you can move fast, stay safe, and always have the evidence to prove it. Every time a user interacts with an agent, a set of powerful guardrails step in to protect your organization. Microsoft Purview ensures that compliance and governance are always enforced. Microsoft Foundry content safety blocks unsafe or harmful content before it ever reaches a user. The hidden layer model scanner digs deep for risks and vulnerabilities that might otherwise go unnoticed. And all of this is continuously monitored by Microsoft Defender, giving your security and compliance teams real-time visibility and peace of mind. With these layers working together, trust and safety are built into every agent interaction right from the start. Now that we've seen test and deploy, let's see how this happens on a continuous basis. Now, just because an agent is live doesn't mean the work is done. In the maintain and monitor phase, compliance and development team join forces to keep the agent safe, effective, and ready for anything. You can track your compliance score in real time, spot gaps, and make sure evidence is always up to date. When regulations change or new risks pop up, you can update the controls, add evaluators, and assign actions to make sure everything is right. Meanwhile, the development teams are watching the telemetry from Microsoft Foundry, looking for anomalies, prompt patterns, or anything that triggers a guardrail. They can fine-tune the agents based on the feedback and user interactions. This phase is all about continuous assurance. The two teams work hand in hand to make sure that it's not just at the start, but it's through your entire life cycle. Now, where does that leave us with? What's the key takeaway, right? Let's step back and look at the big picture. Embedding compliance into your agent isn't a one-and-done task. It's a continuous process that runs through every phase. It starts with the develop, where we set the agent's purpose, define boundaries, and build in guardrails from the beginning. Then in test and deploy, we saw that every agent faces rigorous checks with evaluators and safety controls. And finally, in the maintain, monitor, and scale, the teams work together to adapt, update controls, and keep trust strong as the agent's ecosystem grows. That's how you move fast, stay safe, and always have proof at your fingertips. And now, to bring this to life, I'll hand it over to Sourabh for a live demo of these capabilities in action.
Thank you, Tony and Manny, for explaining to us that how can compliance be built into an agent lifecycle so that organizations can scale agent yet be compliant with the regulatory requirements. Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager helps you to comply with evolving regulations. There are 360 plus regulations that are supported in Microsoft Compliance Manager. Also, we are excited to announce new features that have just been announced by Tony. We will see in our demo that if an organization needs to comply with EU AI and also wants to scale agents, how they can do that. The process that used to take months can now be done in minutes. Because if we understand a regulation, and we understand a regulation like EU AI, which has about 300 pages, it becomes difficult for us to extract controls out of EU AI in a short duration. This duration would likely be weeks to months. We will see how we can do it in a smaller time, allowing teams, allowing organizations to scale agents. We will connect different dots of the new feature announcements that we have had, and we'll see how this process helps organizations to comply. So if you can see, this is the main screen of Purview Compliance Manager, where we highlight the overall compliance score of the organization. We also have a breakdown into points, and we have a history report which says that how your compliance posture has been varying over some time. The starting point would be the regulation tabs over here. So when we go into the regulation, as I told, that there are multiple regulations which are already supported in Purview Compliance Manager, which is 360 plus. And we also have AI regulations, some of the non-AI regulations which are there. But the purpose today is to see that if there is a new regulation like EU AI 2024, and yet you would want to innovate with agents, how you can do both simultaneously, right? So to start with, this is the click point where we are invoking the new feature, which is AI-powered regulatory templates. Now we can see there are two different options over here. The first option is upload your PDF document where all the AI magic happens in the background. And the other option is that you would want to do everything right from scratch, right? Consider this as two different options. Option 1 is quick setup, and the option 2 is custom setup, right? Let's try the quick setup today, or upload PDF document. So assuming that we have uploaded the latest EU AI regulation over here, we have filled in basic details like the template name, overarching regulation. And because in this demo, we want to make sure that we are complying while innovating in Foundry, we have selected Microsoft Foundry as the service. Okay. The next step would be to scan and extract controls out of the EU AI regulation that was selected. Now, as we can see that there is a new entry over here, and the scanning process has started. So if we double click on this process is broken down into 3 different points, right? The first and the foremost and the main point is making sure that anything that you upload into your environment is malware free, is free of any infection, is free of any corruption, so that your environment remains safe, right? So what we do is we pass our PDF into a sandbox environment where every active embeddings, every active link is checked so that it does not infect your environment. Once that is successfully done, the next step is our AI engine goes through the regulation, goes through all the chapters, sections, articles, and extracts controls. Controls that will be relevant for Microsoft Foundry, because you are wanting to innovate with Foundry. Once the controls are extracted, now the action associated with these controls are mapped. So consider this, that if there is a control, what actions do I need to take to fulfill this control and to be compliant? Now, once all of these things are done in the background, you can go ahead and review the draft template. So this draft template is something which is understandable by Purview Compliance Manager. It's a language which Purview Compliance Manager understands, which is a translation of your EU AI PDF that we just uploaded. Now we can see over here, these are the different controls that have been extracted. Let's go ahead and see one of the control. So this is Article 5.8, and this control maps to Article 5.8 of EU AI. And we can see that there are 2 different actions which have been mapped by our AI feature, which is AI-powered regulatory templates. Now, what we want to make sure over here at this moment, that compliance teams are in full control. Whatever we have seen till now has been done by our AI engine, right? But we would want to give that power to the compliance teams, that they can modify, customize the templates according to their requirement. So let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So if you select a particular action, you can see that you have the option to edit this action. Edit this action as per your requirement. You can go ahead and modify the title, score, description of the action. Now the next thing is that, what if you feel that this particular control should have more number of actions and not be limited just to 2 actions, right? So you can actually go ahead and create an action. You can create an action as per your requirement, as per your choice, and associate it to the control. And the third option is importing actions. So I'm glad to tell you that Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager supports more than 7,000 different actions. And we have an entire library of it. So you can pick and choose actions that you would want to associate this with these controls. Assuming that the actions for this particular control have been met, now let's go back and let's see how we can add controls itself, right? So what I just showed you right now was dig down into a control, add actions, modify that particular control. What if the compliance team feels that the number of controls that have been mapped itself is not sufficient, right? So you can actually go ahead and create new controls as per your requirement. You need to give a control a title, an ID, which is a unique identifier, and a family. So we have controls grouped into different families. And then description. And then you can follow the previous step again to add more number of actions to the controls that you have created, just to make sure that the compliance teams are in full control of the templates. Now, once all of these things are done, we assume that, yes, the compliance teams have verified what is going to be set up in the form of a template. And let's go ahead and publish this particular template. So you can see this is the final review of what is going to be published. Once you publish, you can see this entry that, yes, there is a new template which is available, right? which is available for you. And this is the entire setting or the entire detail of this particular template. Now, once the template is set up, the templates only comes into action when you create an assessment, right? The assessment is a test of what improvement actions you need to perform and what improvement actions are already in place. Consider this as a kind of a gap assessment or a risk analysis, right? So let's go ahead and create an assessment. So we come over here, we create an assessment. Now, these are the different regulations that were pre-supported, but we are interested in AI Foundry regulations, right? So once we do that, these are the AI Foundry regulations which are mapped to AI Foundry. And this is the new regulation that we created, or the new template that we created. We have a setup wizard, assessment name, basic details. Now we see that once this selection has been done, Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager automatically fetches the subscription, the projects, and the agents that are available in Microsoft Foundry for your tenant, right? And you also have the option of editing the scope. This is important. This is an important step because we understand that not all agents or not all projects might be deployment ready, right? So there can be agents which are getting developed, might be more of a practice session, but it is not meant for deployment purpose. So you can actually go ahead and scope your assessment to different projects and agents. Let's see how we can do that. So if you see, the project 1 contains 6 different agents, but we would only want to scope it to suppose 3 agents, and we know that the other agents are not ready for deployment. And let's again scope it down to a project itself. Let's omit the other project. We can go ahead and save this change. And once you click on next, this is the brief detail of what the assessment would create for you. Now, once this is done, we can see that there are some actions which are already in place, right? And Purview Compliance Manager has automatically mapped and said that, yes, you are good for these actions, right? And you're certifying certain controls which are already in place. But what would be the next important step is to understand that what are the actions or what are the high-risk actions which are failing or which are missing, right? And you should do that. So let's filter this out with failed high-risk actions. And we see that there is an action which says ensure compliance and safety for harmful and unfair content, right? Let's see what this is about. So when we click on this particular action, you get details of the action. It says that the test status is failed and it's a high-risk event. So you should go ahead and do something about it, right? So once you read the implementation details, Purview Compliance Manager would tell you how you can go to Microsoft Foundry and complete this particular action. This action is specifically tied up to the evaluators for agents. When your agent has been built, but you have not evaluated, so you don't know whether you will comply when you deploy this agent or not. And when you go to testing log, it says that there were 3 agents which were in scope, and for none of them, this particular evaluation has been run, right? So let's come back and let's go to Microsoft Foundry. So these are the list of agents which are available in Microsoft Foundry. And a Foundry developer or a Foundry admin will be able to run this evaluation from Foundry itself. Developers can run this through SDKs, have it as their pipeline. Administrators can run it through the portal. So let's go ahead and create a new evaluation. Now over here, we are filling basic details of for what topics this agent or the associated model will get evaluated with. And there are 2 options. So the option that we are showing over here is the prompts and responses to evaluate this particular agent and the associated model will be generated by a GPT itself. So you can go ahead and select what do you want to do. Either you can select GPT model, or the other is you can upload your test data itself and test the model for evaluations. So once you generate, sample questions and responses will get generated. Now, we were interested in some specific evaluators, but you can see over here there is a list of evaluators that can be run on these models. And all of these evaluators are tied up with different controls that were extracted from the EU AI regulation. So now we can see how these dots are connecting, right? Let's go ahead and add the evaluators. So once we add these evaluators, this will appear over here. Let's go and click on next, submit. Once you submit, the evaluation for these agents that were in scope of the assessment has already been performed, and you can see that a report is generated. This report says that the evaluations have successfully passed. You can also go and see the associated data. Now, this data is automatically synced in the background with Purview Compliance Manager, and this acts as an evidence which shows that yes, you have met a particular control, you have satisfied a particular control, and can also be produced during audits. So let's go to Purview Compliance Manager now, and we can see that the evaluation which was created in Microsoft Foundry has automatically synced, and this particular action is passed. Now, this particular step, whatever we showed till now, is when you are creating an agent and when you are in the deployment process, right? But once you deploy an agent, there are many other checks. There are many other guardrails that you need to set up. Think of it, I would correlate as one of my favorite examples of cybersecurity, layered defense mechanism. So think of your house. So in your house, you don't have only one lock and key. You have valuable assets which you keep inside your room. So your first and foremost layer of protection is the perimeter security. Then comes your main door. Then comes your door in your room. And then is your cupboard. Then is your safe. All these are locked, right? We don't have one lock and key. We have multiple of them to protect our valuable assets. So we have carried out checks during the development and deployment process, but once your agent is deployed, there are additional checks which are recommended by Purview Compliance Manager and scoped specifically for these agents and EU/AI regulation, right? So let's go back and see what are the other actions which are available. Let's go ahead and filter this out. So now we see that the first recommendation is enforce AI communication guardrail. We have a description over here, and Tony already talked about what AI communication guardrail is all about. Now let's go to launch now. So once you click on launch now, you're directly taken to the policy screen of Purview Communication Compliance, and it is asking you to create a policy to protect prompts and responses to your agent so that there is no unethical interaction. You can go ahead and create a policy for Foundry agents. There is a setup wizard. You can add reviewers. You can add input and output filters as well. What kind of filters would you want on your input and output responses, prompts and responses? Once you do that, you have an option of annotate or block only. Let's select annotate and block. Once you do that, you can specify other settings also, other parameters also on which policy match and alerts should be generated. Once you do that, you have the entire settings at the end, and you can go ahead and create this particular policy. Now, once this policy is created, this is automatically also synced with Microsoft Foundry, and you can see over here that the policy has been created and the number of assets that this policy is protecting. Now, the policy was created, but post creation of the policy, there have been interactions which have led to policy matches. And also there have been associated alerts that have been generated. So let's double click on one and see what is the result that we get. So once you click on this, you can see what activity led to an alert generation. And if you click on view all, you will get all the associated activities also which happened in close proximity, close time, which says that why is this a policy violation and why this alert has been generated. This will help administrators go and triage this as well and improve if there is any action that is required. Once this is done, let's go back to Purview Compliance Manager, and now we can see that this particular action has also passed because we went ahead, set up a policy for the recommendation that was there, and once we did that, the test status says that it is passed, right? And we can see our overall compliance score or our improvement actions have increased. And once we come back to the overview screen, so we started from 63%, but we have gone ahead and done multiple actions, and now we had 85% compliant. Similarly, if you keep following the other steps, other process, it is a simple guidance which will help you comply with your regulations that you want. Thank you. Manny, over to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sourabh. Now we showed that trust is not just a document, it's a design choice, right? When we embed guardrails into some of these solutions like Purview or Microsoft Compliance Manager, agents stop becoming experiments, right? And so we have a call to action just for next steps, right? Really explore, use these tools and technologies. Microsoft's Purview Compliance Manager is really the starting point to help organizations be cyber resilient in this new digital and heavy regulated era, right? If you can be from a bank, from a healthcare organization, you start with Purview Compliance Manager, align global regulatory signals to your organization, leveraging technology, right? Even if HIPAA is a top priority for you, you can understand how you can align with NIS2's healthcare component, right, to build a more cyber resilient practice. From there, from the investments that you have in Microsoft security solutions already from E3 or E5, it'll help you really realign your technology so you can do things like roll out agents in confidence and roll out trusted agents, with secured guardrails as well. Second be, engage with Microsoft AI-powered regulatory templates. That actually helps you get a real live snapshot of your cybersecurity posture against any regulation. So it's not, like Sourabh said, it's not something that's going to happen months anymore. This happens in minutes. And what's so great about this tool is when there's an update, I know there's a potential evolution of HIPAA, there's greater cybersecurity controls. You can actually ingest the documentation and you can run a simulation on how the controls would be if this law was enforced, right? I've never said this before, but you can actually get ahead of regulations. And for your organization, that means innovating at hyperscale. And then, last, it is really empower. Before, this was top of mind for compliance leaders. I know there was a challenge between legal leaders and security expert technology leaders, experts in law. But now this really brings folks in the room together, right? So from your engineering teams to executives, this is a core priority for everyone. We have about 3 minutes left. We'll open up for questions. These are some of our past sessions if you'd like to listen to the recordings. Thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Yep. So Foundry control plane is for the development audience or the administrators of the Foundry, where you can see those actions that you can take on the Foundry agents, right? And Compliance Manager is from a regulatory perspective. And as you would have seen in the demo today, the policies that we create, like from Purview, it would get synced to the Foundry control plane. So both work tandem, hand in hand together.
I'm still confusing, so which one should I use?
Both, right? If you want to understand the regulatory landscape.
More license, I guess. To me, they're very similar.
Actually, no. So the Compliance Manager is translate your regulations into actions. So that gives you a regulatory view. And control plane is more from an action perspective. Okay, hey, if you are deploying agents, what do you want to monitor in those agents, right? It need not just be regulations. It's much more out there.
Yeah, with all due respect, I understand that, but you can easily build into these two products into one.
Yep. So they're tied together. So, yeah. Yeah. Hi. Go ahead.
I have a question. So all these, does it apply if you create agents in Copilot Studio, or is it only for Foundry?
Great question. So we talked today about Foundry. This is also applicable, so you can use regulate the AI-powered templates, or to also create actions which are applied for Copilot Studio as well. So it is also applicable from Studio. We had a session like the previous day where we talked about how it helps with the Copilot Studio. So today we were just focusing on the Foundry aspect of it.
Agents, I mean the agents that you create in Copilot that will show up in Compliance Manager.
Yep. Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah, that was our question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.